It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome into another edition of Musso at the box. LSU getting set to kick off the SEC tournament Tuesday morning when they face the 6th seed Georgia Bulldogs. There, of course, will be plenty on the line in this matchup. We will get you a full preview of that here in the next, 25, 30 or so minutes. We will also have plenty more NCAA tournament talk as a new projected field of 64 is out, and it is showing very good news for the LSU Tigers. We can run through that. The SEC announced their all-conference teams, Player of the Year honors, all of that, and some of it does impact LSU, both with their own players being honored and you facing some of the players who were honored Tuesday against the Georgia Bulldogs. I think you all know who I'm talking about. Yes, there will be plenty of mentions about Charlie Condon here on this edition of Musso at the Box, as there should be. So we have a lot to get to here, and glad to have you along with me. Smash the like button if you have not already. Get subscribed up to the YouTube channel. Get subscribed up on your favorite podcast app. You can follow me on social media as well. All of that is greatly appreciated, and let's get right down to it. So when you get to the SEC tournament and you play on Tuesday, the question is always going to be, hey, what's on the line for you and for the opponent? And when you look at LSU, you look at Georgia, there's still plenty on the line for both. And it's going to be very interesting to watch how they decide to go about it, how they decide to attack. LSU, I've told y'all, I think they're in. Win or lose, I think they get a spot. The thing that can screw that up, we went over it, is bid stealing. But if the bid stealing is at a minimum, win or lose, I think LSU's in. I believe if the bid stealing is at a minimum, the SEC is getting 11 teams in this year. The metrics of the league are just too strong, and the bubble is soft. LSU got a lot of help around the country from bubble teams playing themselves out of the NCAA tournament, like Utah, like Xavier, like Virginia Tech, like Louisville, like Georgia Tech. We went through a lot of them when we recapped the sweep against Ole Miss. That part helped. Yes, you ended up with the 5 teams at 13 and 17, but I believe if the bid stealing is at a minimum, the SEC gets the 11 teams into the field this year because the league is the strongest that it's ever been, and the bubble is soft. That being said, you can leave absolutely no doubt if you go beat Georgia on Tuesday, and we also mentioned that. Like, you should still be playing as if your tournament life is on the line, because anything can happen. We've talked about that for weeks. That's life on the bubble. It's a horrible place to be. It's filled with darkness, despair, and depression. You don't want to be on the bubble. You are, even though I think you're in. What we saw from D1 baseball today, when they released their pre-conference tournament projected field of 64, drives that home. LSU is projected in the field, and firmly in the field. They were projected to go to Stillwater, which would be very interesting. That is a very offensive regional every time. That ballpark's a damn launching pad. I don't really know why. The ball just flies out of there. You see like softball, like beer league softball scores in that regional from time to time. So it would be very interesting. For what it's worth, just keeping in that projection, that could also lead to a potential super regional rematch with Kentucky. But I'm less interested in where they have LSU projected right now, and more so that they have them firmly in the field. And they also had 11 teams from the SEC being projected. Again, you have conference tournaments all around the country. That can change. But right now, that's where you stand. And it matches up with everything we talked about in the recap from the weekend with LSU's sweep over Ole Miss. So right now, you're in a good spot. You can leave no doubt by beating Georgia. So can LSU beat Georgia? Yeah, there's a path for that to happen. And I want to talk a little bit about that right now. We can give you our little brief series overview that we always like to do. LSU leads the all-time series with Georgia quite dominantly, 72-27-3. They've won 12 of the last 15 regular season meetings versus Georgia, including a 2-1 series victory last year to close the regular season. However, the last time these two teams met in the SEC tournament was 2021, where LSU was sitting on 13 wins. Were they going to get in? They went 0-1. They still managed to get in. So you're in kind of a similar situation here, but all time, LSU is 9-3 versus Georgia in the SEC tournament. The question everybody's going to want to know is who starts for LSU. And at the time of this recording, we don't have a set pitching matchup for this game, but I can give you my opinion on the direction that LSU is going to go, and I think they will, and I think they need to start Gage Jump in this ball game. Gage Jump threw 6 innings on Thursday against Ole Miss, 83 pitches. They would have brought him back out for the 7th had the rain delay not happened. That happened, and it ended his day. 83 pitches is a lot, but he's gone deeper. Now the caveat is it'd be a short rest, 5 days rest. The caveat I would throw out to you there is that's major league rest. And Gage Jump is looking like he's set to play professional baseball next year. And if he's going to do that, he's going to pitch every 5th day. LSU can lock things up. You need one of your guys. Gage Jump has been that guy for you. And I think that is the way that LSU goes. It's very interesting to sit here and kind of try to map this out. But Jay Johnson hasn't necessarily been in this spot yet at LSU. Now, you've seen him keep things as regimented as they can from a rotation standpoint. You know, I tried to kind of dig some of this up, like, okay, what have they done in the past? And when you look at 2022, when Jay was here, LSU was 17-13 in conference play to end the season. Like, they were in the tournament. You knew that. What they were playing for going into Hoover was, could they get off the hosting bubble and host a regional? LSU would have played on Tuesday that year had that tournament just not had delay after delay after delay, because it's the SEC tournament in Hoover, and that's what happens. And I know what the forecast looks like this weekend. It looks beautiful, but it's going to rain at some point, and the tournament's going to get delayed at some point because it happens every year. I don't care what the forecast says. 2022 was just a complete, deluge the first few days of that tournament. LSU, who was supposed to play Tuesday, did not play their first game in that tournament until Thursday. Now, in that, time lapse, they were able to bring Mikal Hilliard back. Mikal Hilliard had thrown 95 pitches against Vanderbilt the Thursday prior, but ended up having full rest and getting to go. But you were on the hosting bubble. What were you going to do? It looks like they were going to throw their guy. You look at last year, LSU's in a much different spot. They get the bye. They're one of the best teams in the league. They get, a top 4 seed. They get the bye. So you're playing on Wednesday, but it's still 6 days rest. Now, they didn't go Paul Skeens. They didn't go, Ty Floyd. They went Thatcher Hurd, but that's also interesting because Hurd at that point was coming out of the bullpen for LSU, but it was long outings. The outing for Thatcher Hurd prior to his start against South Carolina in last year's SEC tournament was 5 innings, 71 pitches. It was that first game against Georgia, so it was on Thursday. So that was 6 days rest for him. And LSU had everything locked up that they needed to, so they weren't all in on the tournament. We don't have this situation yet. So you don't really have any past history to go off of with Jay Johnson. All you can look at is, all right, you have a chance to lock this up and leave no doubt. You're facing one of the best offenses in the country, and you're going to have to beat them in order to do that. You need one of your guys. And down the stretch, Gage Jump has been the best pitcher from a starting perspective on this team. That is no disrespect to Luke Holman. Luke Holman has been the model of consistency for LSU this year, but down the stretch, Gage Jump has been the best starting pitcher on this staff. And it's 5 days rest. And if he's going to pitch in the major leagues or even in professional baseball one day, he's going to be doing it on 5 days rest. Special circumstances arise. I think that's the direction LSU goes, and I'm A-okay. I am here for it. If they are playing to win and lock it up, that is the direction that they will go. If not, if you try to go bullpen game against Georgia, I feel like you're going to have a pretty early exit from the SEC tournament. Not to say you can't get it done that way. You can, and I will tell you a little bit later on why I think LSU actually can have success pitching against Georgia. But if you have an opportunity to throw a guy like Gage Jump, I think you absolutely do it. Jay Johnson was asked after the series against Ole Miss if they had made a decision. He said they had not, but he did mention Jump working hard already to try and get back. So maybe that's even him tipping his hand a little bit there. We'll see. We're not going to have an announcement. It's now postseason. Jay never announces publicly his pitchers in the postseason, but that's my 2 cents. I think LSU goes Gage Jump against the Georgia Bulldogs. All right, let's talk a little bit about Georgia. Who might they throw? That's going to be a very interesting question as well. What is Georgia playing for? Georgia is playing for a top 8 national seed right now. They are hosting. Can they host all the way through? Losing that series to Florida, did it ding them? Maybe not so much. You'll just have to wait and see. For what it's worth, that projection D1 baseball had them as the 8th national seed. If Georgia had that locked up, I think you'd see them look at this as an opportunity of, it's not really an opportunity, if that makes any sense. But that's not where they are. The interesting thing is, which direction do they go? Georgia doesn't really have an ace. Like, Georgia's pitching staff, and we'll get into it, hasn't been great as a whole. They have some really good arms that have performed well, but as a whole, their pitching staff has not been great. Their offense is incredible, and they don't really have an ace. Like, Leighton Finley's been really good. Leighton Finley would be on 4 days rest. He's not pitching. Colton Smith has come on strong as of late through 8 innings against Florida in their win Thursday night. It'd be 5 days rest for him. Could they bring him back? Sure. A name to watch, Charlie Goldstein. Charlie Goldstein's been really good for Georgia this year, but he's been injured. His last outing, or I should say, yes, his last outing came on May 4th against Vanderbilt, 2 2/3 scoreless, but he left due to some triceps discomfort, I should say, and hasn't really pitched since then. But I mean, on the year, it's an ERA, just north of 3.5. Like, great strikeout to walk ratio. He's been really good. If he's set to go, that could be a very interesting option for Georgia in this ball game. Look, Wes Johnson, we all know him well here. He's a great pitching coach. You expect for them to have success on the mound. And LSU's offense has been a bit of a struggle so far, a struggle with consistency, I should say, throughout the season to this point. For LSU to win this game, their path is on the mound. So can LSU pitch well against this Georgia offense? Yes, is the answer. Will they is a whole nother conversation and topic. Can they? Yes. So there's evidence of that this year. Now, I get it. Situations are different. Teams are different. All of that. But when you look at the top 5 offenses in the SEC off of batting average, maybe even the top 5 offenses in the SEC off of runs scored, that's a better way to measure this. The top 5, they're the same. They might not be in the same order, but they're the same 5 teams. It's Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, A&M, Kentucky, in some order. LSU has played, or will have played, once you face Georgia, 4 out of those 5 teams. And they had success on the mound against all of them. Like, go back to that Tennessee weekend. LSU's pitching kept them in ball games all weekend long. The offense was more of your problem that week. Like, LSU in the first 2 games, you gave up 6 to Tennessee in that ballpark. Then you gave up 3 in game number 2. You were pitching great in game 3 until like the 7th inning, but you still didn't give up double digits at all that weekend to that offense. Texas A&M. LSU gave up 8 runs total in the first 2 games of that series against that A&M offense. Now, game 3 got away from you, but it was largely because of 1 inning. You gave up 9 in 1 inning. Other than that, you hung a bunch of zeros. Alabama. LSU had Alabama at 3 runs until the final 2 innings of that game on Friday. We know that. We don't have to rehash that. It was terrible. I don't want to talk about it. So you ended up giving up 8. After that, you allowed 7 runs. no double digits. You allow double digits one time against those three opponents, and Georgia will make a fourth. So, yes, there is evidence that they can pitch well against this Georgia offense, which is very, very good, and we'll get into it in a moment. But it's the most marked improvement of this LSU team down the stretch has been on the mound. And if you get Gage Jump out there and you let him start for you, he might not be able to give you the full six plus inning outing with over 100 pitches or anything like that. But could he give you 70, 80 pitches on 5 days rest? Probably. And if he's anything like he's been, you have a great shot to win that ball game because he can get you through the order a couple of times, and then you could turn it over to a guy like Griffin Herring, who's plenty well rested, or Christian Little, who's plenty well rested like that. Like, the marked improvement from this is the pitching staff for this LSU team. The more interesting question is, if you can't hold down this Georgia offense, can you score with them? And my answer to you there is flatly no, unless Georgia just is happy with where they are and they don't go all in to win this. If Georgia plays this game against LSU like they would a regular season game and their pitching staff performs to a level that they're capable, LSU cannot score with this Georgia team. I firmly believe that they cannot score with this Georgia team. And I don't think that's really groundbreaking news. Let's talk about this Georgia offense a little bit. We will get to Charlie Condon, but I want to talk, obviously, about the offense kind of as a whole. Georgia has hit a school record 140 home runs this season. That ranks third nationally. This year's squad has also set a school record in grand slams with 11. So beware the Georgia Bulldogs having the bases loaded. They rank top 5 nationally in slugging percentage, in on-base percentage. They are second in the league in batting average. And they have scored double-digit runs in 7 of their last 9 SEC games. 6 straight before the weekend against Florida. It is a juggernaut in every sense of the word. Georgia averages 9 runs per game overall in the season, 8 runs per game in the SEC. There is no dramatic drop-off for this lineup when they enter conference play. They've arguably been better in conference play. It is a veteran lineup. It is a talented lineup. It is a lineup filled with transfers. So you're not really seeing a lot of the same guys you did last year. One guy that obviously is very consistent there that you did see last year is Charlie Condon. As of Monday, the SEC Player of the Year, the favorite for the Golden Spikes, the favorite to go number 1 overall in July's draft. He has been incredible. He leads the NCAA with a .451 batting average. He has hit a school record 35 home runs, and depending on how deep of a run Georgia can make in the postseason, has a legitimate chance to break Brandon Larson's SEC record of 40 home runs in a season. That is, his 35 are already the most home runs in the BB Core era in college baseball. You're looking at a guy with 219 total bases. You're looking at a top 5 on base percentage nationally. 50 walks on the year, 23 of those intentional. He's been awesome, and oh, by the way, he is currently riding a 24-game hitting streak. The protection around him makes it really hard to pitch around Charlie Condon. I know that's the question. I've been asked it many times already. Would you pitch to Charlie Condon? And my answer is no. I wouldn't. I don't care what the protection is around him. I get they can beat you in multiple ways. I'm still not pitching to that guy. You saw teams intentionally walk Barry Bonds with the bases loaded. That's exactly what I would do to Charlie Condon. Yes, Georgia's lineup's deep and talented. Yes, he's got great protection. Fine. Prove it. Let those other guys beat you. Not him. Never. Like, it's just patently absurd to throw that kid a baseball at this point. You might say that's soft. I say I don't care. I'm trying to win. And if you neutralize him as best you can, you increase your chance of winning no matter who else is around him in that lineup. So that's my answer to that. Would I pitch to Charlie Condon? Hell no, I would not pitch to Charlie Condon. LSU will, and we'll see how that goes. When you look at the guys around him that we've referenced so many times, one of them that you have to immediately highlight is Corey Collins. He's a senior. He's been at Georgia for a long time, and he's been really, really good. 361 average, 18 homers of his own, 52 RBI. He ranks second in the country in on-base percentage. Like, he has a higher on base than Charlie Condon. So, I mean, that's a guy that's been great. He'll hit in the top of the top of the lineup there, top three of that lineup, and he's been really good. There's a freshman, Trey Phelps, who's been very good for Georgia as well. Suffered through a little bit of some injuries, so the home run numbers aren't quite there yet as a freshman, but he's sitting on 9 and he's hitting 370. Like, he has been phenomenal for Georgia as well offensively. Then you can get into all the all the transfers. One name that should sound very familiar is Slade Alford. He came from Mississippi State, hitting a tick below 300, but he's got 16 home runs, and he's second on the team in RBI. So that's, again, protection for Charlie Condon there. Dylan Goldstein, who transferred in, has been really good. Double-digit homers and average just below 295. There's guys just everywhere. Paul Totes is really one of their best contact hitters, 349 on the year. I say contact because the RBI numbers aren't there and the home run numbers aren't there either. But it's a lineup that can beat you in many different ways. But if it's up to me, I'm making the other 8 guys beat you, regardless of protection. I'm not pitching to Charlie Condon. Like I said, they will, and we will see how that goes. Georgia's pitching staff, like we said, look, overall in the year, it's not great. They have a team ERA of 5.58. When you look at where that sits in the SEC, that's overall on the season. That has Georgia at 9th. So, I mean, 9 out of 14. They're not going to set the world on fire there. If you want to look at it from a conference-only perspective for the Georgia Bulldogs when it comes to ERA, you're looking at an ERA over 7. Like, they have scored plenty, but they give up runs. So LSU should be able to score, but I don't think they can score with Georgia, as previously stated. So the path for LSU is the same as it's been. Pitch well, win the game on the mound, and come up with your timely hitting when you can. That is it for LSU. You do that, you have a more than fair chance to beat Georgia, who's very, very, very good. The interesting matchup that we haven't mentioned in this is Wes Johnson being in the other dugout. Now, what's interesting is LSU's pitching staff has changed a good bit since Wes Johnson was with LSU, even in a year. Like, sure, he's familiar with guys like Griffin Herring, which could be a very interesting matchup since he's been your best reliever. The other head coach knows a great scouting report on him. But he didn't coach Gage Jump. He didn't coach Justin Lohr. You know, I mean, you keep going down the list. Like, you brought in guys. There's freshmen that have contributed. So, like, there is that aspect where, yes, he has an understanding of a lot of guys, but the majority of them are in the bullpen. And, yes, that could be interesting because that's where LSU's really taking that step, is in the bullpen. But you're going to have to go out there. You're going to have to execute. That's your path. Same as it's been. Pitch well. Come up with a timely hit when you can. And you should have opportunity to do that against Georgia. LSU's not going to go out there and score double digits. I don't believe that. Let's see. I believe LSU has scored double digits in conference play once. I am checking that actually right now. And it was against Vanderbilt if they did, because it was the 10 runs. Twice, Missouri. Forgot about the 12-1 win over Missouri. So LSU, LSU has scored double digits in conference play twice. Not likely that's going to happen. But you've had success against the top offenses in this league for the mound. You have to go out there and do it again against Georgia. I want to get to a little bit about what the league announced today and maybe a little bit more SEC tournament, but let me go ahead and give you a pick right now. This is a tough one. Because I don't know how Georgia's going to play it. I would imagine Georgia takes a pretty big swing at LSU, knowing that they can probably lock up a top 8 with at least one win, maybe more, but at least one win in Hoover. So I would think Georgia takes a pretty big swing at the Tigers. And if they do that, I think Georgia wins the game. Because while LSU has pitched well against the top offenses in the league, it hasn't always necessarily shown up in success. Like, they lost all 3 games against Tennessee. They did take the series against Texas A&M. They lost the series against Alabama. So, I mean, you're looking at 3 wins in 9 games there. It hasn't always translated to wins. So if Georgia takes their swing, I think Georgia wins the game because I think they're better. If Georgia plays it cautiously, then I think LSU wins the game. So it really comes down to how Georgia handles this. And I don't know how they're going to do that, so it's hard to give a prediction. Hand to fire, have to do it. I'll take Georgia. They've just been way more consistent than LSU all year long. And now it's postseason, and consistency wins in the postseason. So I guess my official pick will be Georgia, but I do want to throw out the little disclaimer that if Georgia doesn't put forth their best swing at LSU, and I mean in terms of how they manage the game, not just they have an off day, then I think LSU wins the ball game. But hand to fire, you have to make a prediction. I will take Georgia. They've been more consistent. So what happens then if they lose? If LSU loses, are they in? I said it right off the top. I think that they are still, because I firmly believe that if the bid stealing isn't crazy, the SEC is getting 11 teams in. Update on bid stealing so far, it's been good news. Army came through for LSU and really all bubble teams here on Monday, winning the Patriot League. They won it in the regular season, and they won it in the tournament. So they got themselves the automatic bid. They're in. Columbia, same thing in the Ivy League, right? They were the first team in. That's great news. So it's off to a good start. But, you do have to keep an eye on that, and we will. I mean, you want teams like ECU to win the American, obviously, right? That's something that you want to happen. That's what you're looking for. Just, you want to know what teams to root for? I'm going to tell you all of them. Now, there's certain leagues that aren't going to be multiple bid leagues. Like, the Sun Belt's going to get so many teams in, it would have to take a monumental upset in that tournament for a bid steal to happen. They're already a multi-bid league. But you look at somebody like Lamar not winning the Southland Conference. That could be a problem, right? That's kind of what you're looking at is the Big East. UConn's in. If St. John's or Georgetown wins that tournament, that's a problem. Things like that nature there. So, look, we'll keep you up to date as conference tournaments get more underway with bid stealing and things of that nature. But for me, that's the only thing that can keep LSU out right now, in my opinion. I think the resume is strong. I think the way they've finished has been strong. And that's when I look at the other 4 teams that are 13 and 17 in the SEC, because I know so many people have talked about that. And that LSU's resume is the weakest out of all of them, and fine. You know what? Yeah, metric-wise it is, but LSU's metrics are still damn strong. And LSU finished the season better than 2 of those teams. South Carolina's lost their last 6 SEC games. They got swept twice. Now, they played Georgia and Tennessee, 2 very good teams, but you didn't salvage 1 game in that. Florida, who's also at 13 and 17, beat Georgia 2 out of 3 down the stretch. South Carolina has lost their last 6 games. That is you go one and done in Hoover and lose 7 in a row. That's the image you leave for the committee. That ain't good. We talk so much about the stretch LSU's been on where they've won 4 out of their last 5 SEC series to close, you know what Vanderbilt did? They lost 4 out of their last 5 SEC series. You go one and done in Hoover after doing that, that's not a good last impression to leave on the committee. I've seen a lot of people compare LSU to the 2018 Kentucky team. And 2018 was one of the last years where the SEC really had a strong chance to get 11 teams in. And Kentucky would have been that 11th team. And they went into the SEC tournament, and they sat at 30 in the RPI and at 13 and 17 in the league. That is the identical position that LSU is in. So it makes sense. And Kentucky went one and done, and they were left out. You know what the big difference is? Kentucky lost 5 of their last 6 ball games. I like the way LSU played down the stretch, leaving the lasting impact. So that's why I look at that and I say, you know what, if there is bid stealing and it goes crazy, I think some of those other teams are more vulnerable than LSU because of how they finished the season, because of that final image they'll leave at the committee. The other thing is those 4 teams play each other on Tuesday. LSU doesn't. That could be a de facto elimination game between those 4 teams. Could be. I think Alabama's pretty firmly in. I think Florida's pretty firmly in. That was the conversation with Florida has always been, could they get above 500? Well, they did that. So I think they're firmly in. But I think LSU, while, yeah, their resume, metric-wise, might not be up to par with the other 4 teams, the way they're playing is better. When you look at a team like South Carolina that's lost 6 straight, and Vanderbilt, who lost 4 of their last 5 conference weekends, and almost got swept to close the regular season. We'll see. I like LSU's position an awful lot. Bid stealing changes it all, and we've been consistent in saying that. But right now, I like LSU's position, and I think they're in, win or lose. All right, lastly here, the SEC announcing its honors. LSU did have some players, and I want to give those guys their, their due. We mentioned Charlie Condon as the SEC Player of the Year, no surprise. Nick Migione, the Coach of the Year at Kentucky, no surprise. What he's done there has been fantastic. Tommy White, Luke Holman, Griffin Herring, they all were second-team All-SEC. I mean, look, Charlie Condon got third base, so you're just not going to beat him out. Tommy White's had a great year, but you're just not going to beat him out there. Jack Caglione gets first team first base, so it's rough for Jared Jones. Blake Burke obviously gets second team, rough for Jared Jones. Like, it's just where your two best players played. That's also where you had some of the best players in the league play as well, like the top echelon of the players in the league. Pitcher of the Year was Hagen Smith. Congratulations to him. And I mean, look, Holman, well-deserved second-team honor there. Tommy White, well-deserved, and Griffin Herring as well. I mean, Griffin Herring's had an All-American type season. Really, so has Tommy White, and arguably so has Luke Holman. When you look at the freshman team, well-represented is LSU. Stephen Milam, Ashton Larson, the usual suspects, and they absolutely deserve it. I mean, those 2 guys have been awesome for LSU, and especially down the stretch. I mean, Larson really asserted himself and took hold of a lineup spot when LSU started to go on this run here in the second half of conference play. And Stephen Milam, you've just seen him develop throughout the season. They both have very bright futures at LSU, and it was no-brainers to have them both on that team. So you landed 5, Tommy White, Holman, and Herring on the second team, Milam and Larson on the all-freshman team, and it is just well-deserved. It's a bummer. It is a bummer for Jared Jones to not get the recognition, but like I said, man, it's just your 2 best players played positions where the best players in the league also played. And, I mean, it shows you how deep you are at third base as a league and at first base specifically. I mean, Cags, Burke, Jones, like that. You'd be hard-pressed to find a league around the country that has 3 better first basemen than that. So when you only do first and second team, you have to leave a guy out. And unfortunately, it was Jared Jones. He still had a great career and a great season for LSU. All right, that's going to wrap us up here for this edition. Hope it was informative. We'll be back after LSU, their game in the SEC tournament, hoping for a win, but we'll recap it one way or the other. So get subscribed up if you haven't already. Smash the like button on this video if you haven't already. Subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast app Follow me on social media. And be here for more on next time on Musso at the Box.